So welcome to It's Not All About the Numbers, the leadership podcast that doesn't just focus on the bottom line. Hello, my name is Chris and that is Mike.
Hi, everyone.
And this week, our co-host is Wolter Rebergen, a RevOps guru from Unium and a man after my own heart, a community builder, a SaaS community builder. Welcome, Wolter.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you, Mike. Great to be here.
Excellent. And this week, we've had a funny old week because it's a 4-day week. But Mike, how's your week been?
It's a 4-day week, so it's been a bit mad. So I've been up in London. So I live in Dorset, so I've been up in London for a few days working on a project. But the thing I wanted to mention about that was because the building that I was working in is the Home Office building, but it's now also the home of the department I used to work in. So it was really nice this week when I walked in the door for my new project. I got a hug from somebody that I used to work with by the lifts that bumped into me there. And then after a meeting yesterday, we popped to the pub and were standing outside a pub in London, and somebody else waved at me across the street and ran across the street and gave me a hug as well. Both fellas, just to be clear, if my wife's listening.
Yeah.
Well, anything goes. Now you're a podcast sensation.
Exactly, yeah. And I think that could have been it. But no, it was really nice. So it was really nice to be up in London working, but it was also nice to sort of touch base with some people that I haven't seen for ages. So yeah, really good.
London does that, actually. I think you see so many people in London that you're bound to know one or two. Excellent. And Wolter, how about yourself? How's your week?
Yeah, I can echo on Mike's words there. Like, you have a 4-day work week, which of course in itself is a nice thing. But typically the work still wants to be 40 hours and it needs to be cramped in those 4 days. So, a lot going on. Also, for me, April is going to be a busy time of events. So, also for that, you need to kind of prepare and put a lot of stuff into this week. But it's all good. I hadn't been to London in a while, though. So
it's still there. It's
still there.
I mean, even post Brexit, it is still there.
Awesome.
It is. It's alive and kicking. Where are you in the world then, Wolter?
I'm close to Amsterdam. Our office is in Amsterdam, and I'm close to that.
And just to touch on one thing that I said earlier, you live in the world of RevOps. So before we go into it, it's revenue operations, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Right. Well, we will definitely come back to that. So my week. So I had a good week at work. We had a new starter join us, which is brilliant on the marketing side. Did a bit of a content planning session, which is fantastic. And after all the abuse that I got in a previous episode about not knowing my geography of my own country, I've decided to take the family on a road trip this Easter. So we're going up to Harrogate, we're going to pop to York, and we're going to explore everything north of Milton Keynes.
Just make sure you pick the right motorway. Yeah, you don't head west.
they've all got the north on the top of the sign, surely. Anyway, I don't want to continue to embarrass myself, so I'll skip over that. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to a break. And Wolter, I totally get what you mean. 4-day week, but still a 40-hour week. Which if we talk to the masters like Tim Ferriss of the 4-hour week, I'm sure he'll tell us that we're doing everything wrong. But
this is the place where the technological revolution really needs to help us, which is when we switch off the emails and go off on a long weekend or on holiday. The bots or the pixies come in and do the bits of work that arrive. So when we come back, it's nice. Everything's nice and clear. That's the technological revolution I'm looking forward to.
Well, I know someone who is talking to a lot of people in that space, Mike. So thank you for teeing me up there. So Wolter, I've seen, normally we kick off with something sort of relevant for this week. And I saw this week your SaaS campus, your community that you're growing. I was really curious about what that is. And also you might need to explain what SaaS is, because, everyone assumes the acronyms nowadays.
Yeah. Yeah, in general, SaaS means software as a service. So that means, in the good old days, you would go to a store and buy like the CD-ROM, I think it was called. And you had before that you had was it floppy or something, disk drive, or I forgot the actual terms for that. you just bought it, and then after you paid the cashier the money, it was yours. Nowadays people rent the software, right? So you get your subscription, and that is as a service. It means you don't buy something, it's not yours, you rent it, it's as a service for the software. So that's SaaS in general. So it's really a recurring world. So you want to keep happy customers, because if you sign the bad ones, I mean, if you sell the CD-ROM, you just close the shop and don't try to hide behind the counter, and the money is yours. But in recurring worlds, you need to keep them happy. So it's a good community to I think everyone tries to get happy customers in, because that's important for the longevity of the world.
I suppose the commitment is actually in the title a little bit. Your software as a service, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So you're talking about delivering service, which is great news. Well, tell me more about the community though, because that looks really interesting.
I think the community, there's a few communities actually in SaaS. So even though it's already kind of a big industry by now, it's still a small world. Kind of like what you just said about London, right? It's a massive town, but somehow you still get hugged twice when you appear in it. So it's the same with SaaS. Many people in the industry, many companies, but it's still a small world, and there's a lot of events, communities to take part in, and to feel like part of something bigger than your own organization. And I think there's a few of those. There's communities like We Love SaaS, there's Artist, there's TechCon, there's SaaSiest. There's many of these communities. And another one is called the SaaS Campus, which you just referred to, which is kind of the let's learn together kind of community, where you really share knowledge in certain topics. So you have a finance thread, you have a fundraise chat thread, you have many RevOps, even sales, marketing, and there's all kinds of both C-levels, but also just working people that actually do and educate themselves and each other there, which is, I think, quite unique. I don't know if there's many other industries that focus so much on educating each other and helping each other grow.
No, it sounds really cool. I just wanted to sort of dig into that a little bit. So when you introduced software as a service as a thing, it's that you're renting the software. So there's like almost like a continuous sales cycle going on there.
Yeah.
So my questions were like, who's the community for? Is it really the community? Are they for the people using the software, or are they seen as a sales mechanism? How does that work? It feels like that's a tension, right? How does that work?
No, it is like, and typically what you see, the communities are actually built by people that just wanted to draw customers to them by means of a community, which is fun. But in the meantime, like I think one of the slogans that I see is like, we grow by helping others. I think that should be kind of that, so you can make money off the community. You help others. I think there's no better way to make money by helping others. Yeah, in general, it's really about knowledge sharing. It's a unique industry. It's relatively new, right? I mean, the cloud hasn't been around for such a long time. So doing everything as a service also means everything needs to be in sort of a cloud. So it is new, and a lot of companies grew, and some grew very fast. Some have still tough time adjusting to the new climate and recurring. Because what you say with sales, the CD-ROM was a one-off sale, and then the salesperson could, spend his commission and go on holiday and do something fun. But now he needs to be back. And you kind of saw where you had sales and you had a customer support. In case something is wrong, the CD-ROM broke, then you need somebody to help them. But now you actually have a customer success, which is more focused on the actual relationship. Because also, like, the original sell you make might not be the final revenue that the customer signs, because the customer might need more add-ons, more features that you're building, and you want to get upsells. So there's a customer success team that not only takes care of the relation, but also wants to grow even more revenue out of the customer. It's customer success is kind of transformed into a monetization engine instead of a cost. Right, that was what it used to be. It's just people you need to unfortunately hire in case something's wrong, and now it's like, let's make money.
Absolutely, and kind of linked to that, I'm going to ask you a question, Chris, because obviously Gen CFO has it's all about community. So in what Wolter just said there, how does that relate to the Gen CFO community and how you experience community? Is it similar, different?
Yeah, I totally recognise what Wolter's saying there about community being valuable, and the best communities are kind of passion led rather than disguised for a business development team. But and the thing is, I think there was a bit of a move in the marketing world where all sorts of things were happening, changes in data, changes in GDPR, changes in marketing spend going through the roof. So a lot of marketeers saw community as a nice way of finding our customers. But I don't think Wolter's or our community is actually on that end. We're about trying to get users to come together to talk about their problems, to fix problems, to share. The real value is the knowledge share, and we talk about peer learning and that sort of shared experience. And it's hard to explain the value of those if you haven't attended, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I think just today I had 2 meetings with other peers. I don't get any revenue from them directly, right? But it's just like knowledge sharing, like, hey, how do you manage your data? Your CRM was one of the topics this morning, and it's so interesting that you just live in an industry, in a community where you can actually just ask other people and just really, really help each other. I think it's so powerful that you can do that, because I mean, technically we're all in this together. We want to, build something cool, and we want to bring it to many people. And usually one person alone cannot do that. I mean, there's a few smarty pantses on the world. I'm not one of them. So I need peers to help me.
Do you think it attracts a type of person though? Because as you say, there are some people that feel that they can do everything on their own, and they're an island, and off we go, and they're quite protective of their knowledge, and they're protective of their sort of status. But I think in community, you might attract a slightly different type of person, right?
No, I would agree with that. I think it is still like a kind of persona that would join up. I think you need to. It attracts a bit of the extroverts, mostly, like people that also feel like, I just want to have a chat. I get energy from a chat. And there's also people that don't get so much energy from a chat, and they use, so we also in the communities try to have like the more passive channels where there's just a Slack channel and you can just type something, so you can still hide behind your screen, if you know what I'm saying, right? And just ask your question without, being put on the spot in front of a stage or in a Teams meeting or a Zoom meeting or whatever meeting. So I think that really helps to lower the threshold of entering the communities like that. But it is, usually filled with the most, especially if you come together with a community. I don't know if the Gen CFO has like physical communities where you try to meet up every now and then.
Yeah, we do. And this isn't all about Gen CFO, right? But
no, it's about communities.
It's about communities. But I completely agree. A community can be online, and even online communities can be different, right? You've taken the Slack approach, which, if people don't know, is a collaboration tool, very heavily used in the IT world. We have a community where it's more like a Facebook experience. Yeah. So there are different online communities, but also, we encourage people to meet up offline, and not necessarily part of our community. We will help them connect and get together. But and then we run like our core events, which is when we try to get the bigger speakers in and things like that. But I think the combination of the two works really well, and I refer to it as the sort of third space between home and work, where you can kind of kick back with people who care, and it's not your boss or your other half.
Yeah.
What's really interesting listening to you talk, you both talking, is what I'm thinking about is the early days of Twitter, and when the early days of Twitter, when it was for the geeks rather than where it's ended up. It was very much what you're describing. It was very much a community of very like-minded people that were sharing things together, as well as cat photos.
So are you saying this isn't going to end well?
No, well, no. I was going to say, actually, it's almost that the thing that you're doing, maybe without even thinking about it, is the moderation bit. So the thing that Twitter never had was that really good curation, moderation, support behind it. So when it became slightly sewer-like, it just sort of like went completely bad. But the communities that you're describing have that. You've got that moderation, right? You've got that kind of like the rules in place to allow all the positives of social, but without or not all of the negatives that we've seen with Facebook and we've seen with Twitter. So it's just really interesting listening to you talking about it.
I think it's usually like where money comes in heavily is where communities break apart, you know, and then that's what you see in Twitter, like, oh, let's monetize this, let's monetize that. And, you know, it adds left, right, and center and proposed of follow this page and blah, blah. It slowly digresses the quality of the things you will find there. And it's the same in communities. Like if you have a peer-to-peer community, like, you know, if you have, for instance, a community of all HR reps and you would allow 5 recruiters there that suddenly start to blast like, hey, I can help you recruit with your talent acquisition. If you would allow those things, the community dies fast, because people like, oh, I'm not going to watch it because I'm only being sold to. And if I put something like, I'm looking for this new HR specialist, do you know anybody in your network? I'm going to get 5 recruitment offers. You know, as soon as it's so tempting for communities to start making more money, right? Because it's like all these people are here, all these decision makers are here, they can just hand me a check and I can move on. It's fantastic. And to play the long game in a community and feel like, no, we're going to keep it as it is and keep it steady, will ultimately become a long-lasting community. And I think that in the end will also be more rewarding, right? It will generate more revenue, which you just need to be a bit more patient.
I think that what you're describing, or how I take what you're describing, is you need to go into community with like an altruistic attitude.
Yeah.
You know, the attitude you've got is to give. You may get something back in the end, but you don't know what it is, and it might not be a direct monetary benefit. Exactly. It might be something else. Yeah. And I think that's a really interesting reflection. That's really cool.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, I'm glad we're all aligned on that. Made everybody feel very happy about community and getting involved. I'm going to switch this sort of back to you, Wolter, a little bit, because we mentioned revenue operations earlier. Now, I don't want to get too technical, but it does sound pretty cool. RevOps to me sounds like a sort of Formula One team or something that I want to get behind. But what is RevOps, and what's your sort of role within transformation?
I think it's in essence, it's an enablement organization and an alignment organization. So it needs to, you know, where we have sales, marketing, customer success, all these kind of 3 commercial engines that want to get customers in somehow and want to retain customers and monetize on existing customers. I think if you divide in terms of like, we need to understand the what, like what kind of customers, and how do we get the customers. And I think each of the functional organizations needs to be the leaders in terms of like, how do we get it? Like there should not be a separate organ that would tell a marketing organization, this is how you should run your department, because it always includes the people that know best. So we need to kind of leave the functional organization into the how, but you need the what and like who. Those kind of questions we need to bring into a more central organization, you know, so they're all going after the same goal. This is the ideal customer. This is what they look like. This is where they live. And this is the data that backs that up. So it's like, you know, you establish an ideal customer profile. And from that ideal customer profile, you describe where are they currently in their journey going to buy Unium at some point. Unium is our solution, right? And like when are they ready to make decisions? When are they experiencing the pains that we solve? And what kind of sales is needed for that? And when do we do sales? Should we do it from the very beginning? Probably not. Should we do it a bit later and nurture them with marketing first? Yeah, that sounds a bit better. And, you know, if they're of a certain matureness in our life cycle, then we need to do a bit more. So it's more about like establishing, really selling from based on where does the customer is. So really the buyer, what are they doing, instead of just how do we do sales? No.
From in sort of software terms or development terms, what you're describing RevOps as is like user research, user focus. So yes. It's being really, really clear. Or I'm testing this. I'm not telling you.
Yeah.
It's about being really, really clear what the customer wants, and then providing them with the thing that they actually want, rather than what quite a lot of sales is around is it will sell you the thing that we've got, even if it doesn't do the thing that you need, we'll still sell you the thing that we've got. So it's almost like that customer focus bit.
Yeah, exactly. Because like, you know, it's become, I think over the last years, it's become increasingly hard to buy stuff, because, you know, typically if you need, you know, I don't know, a ventilator for your room, you type in ventilator on Google, the one that has the most SEO budget will be on top. It's not necessarily the best ventilator. And, you know, communities is a good way to counter that, because you can network, you have like your referrals amongst you. And that's I think a great way, but really understanding need to kind of stop selling and help buying. I think that's kind of the mind shift, because, like I said, we're in the subscription world. The first sell doesn't really care as much anymore, because you're going to spend a lot of money getting the customer in, and you only get that back if you keep them in for a long time. So bad customers, unhappy customers, are an energy killer and are a bad reference in a community that close. So you need to get happy customers, and really defining what a happy customer looked like, and establishing focus on that from all together, all disciplines. Like, we all are acting as one, and we're going to go for these profiles on this way, and then leaving the functional organization in a position where they decide how it's best done, is getting best of both worlds.
That sounds really interesting. I mean, Chris and I often talk about transformation needing to focus on people, process, and then technology. So it needs to be people first.
Yeah.
What you've described really well is the what. I'm really intrigued. How do you do what you've just described? What are the kind of like the tools and the tricks behind finding out what your customers want?
That's amazing question, and that is in all transparency also the question we've been working on the most. And I don't think we ever get a clear answer that I can just spit out in a podcast like, this is it. It was that simple. There you go, Mike.
I was expecting this was going to be it. This was going to be the revelation.
I'm so sorry. I'm destroying all the hopes and dreams here, but it's. For us, we're figuring it out. And for me, I think what we did now is, it starts by establishing that ideal customer. Which person would benefit from us the most, not only today, but also in 3 years from now and in 5 years from now. And for us, that is like, people with a recurring business, people that have some sort of complexity in their offering. And we have positioned our product in a specific niche to cater to those. And of course, that niche is big enough for us to become a unicorn one day and like grow millions and millions of revenue. But for now, it's to keep that focus allows us to also spend our money properly, because it's not, there was in the SaaS industry, there was just a lot of grow at all cost kind of principles. Just, I'm getting funding left, right, and center. I'm just going to spend it all in sales. And if it doesn't come back, we'll throw more money at the problem from investors. And that kind of died 2 years ago, that principle. So now it's more growing efficiently and becoming a bit more wiser with your money, which I think is a good thing. But that means you need to have focus on that ideal customer profile. And what we then do is, based on the conversations we had with our customers, based on the conversation we're still having with our prospects, we really establish, like, when is the first time they're getting annoyed by sending an invoice manually? That's maybe not in the first 2 weeks, right? Because you're just happy that you're sending your first invoice. Yeah, I have my first revenue. It's a celebration moment. It's not a pain point. So we have an invoicing automation tool, amongst other things. Should we then already say like, oh, that must be such a waste of your time that you're sending out these 2 invoices? No, we shouldn't. But we should educate them that at a certain point they're going to be sending thousands, and that's going to be annoying. And when that happens, they need to think of us. So it's about putting all these stages into certain buckets, and then also based on criteria we have set for that, putting them in our customer CRM, customer relationship management software, in certain buckets. So, and for each bucket we have different activities.
It's really interesting listening to you explain that, and the fact it's not a magic solution it's almost good, because that reassures me, because quite often I find that when talking about transformation, the bit that people underestimate massively is that people bit, and that needs to sorry, Chris can edit that bit. That's the postman in the rain.
I'm leaving it in just to embarrass you.
Yeah, sorry, that was me vanishing for the postman in the rain. So no, what I was saying is, quite often in transformation, people will buy a tool or will update their processes and do process re-engineering, but they won't realize that the people bit is necessary, and it's hard, and it takes time, and it's different for different people and different customers. And I think what you've just described really well in what you went through is basically that. It's different for different people. There is no magic solution. You have to put time and effort in it. And I've lost count of the amount of times that I've said to different people is, this is the bit that takes time. You have to put effort in it. If you don't do this bit, it won't work. So,
and I think that's it, right? And like the people bit is often forgotten. And in this, I think this way, it's not about, that's usually what transformation means at a lot of company. Like, we hire this big C-level person, and he's or she is going to tell us how to do new things. And that usually doesn't end well. I mean, it's usually a person that can really impress the CEO, like, oh, this person really knocked me off my feet in the interview. But in the end, the person can never explain, an SEO marketeer, how SEO is done. Like, we need to keep the what and sorry, the how. We need to keep that alive, and then transformation is less painful because people are left in their value and are respected for what they have knowledge of, and we allow them to teach us how things are done. And I think that's what transformation is, not transforming so much maybe, but just creating a common goal.
It's great to sort of hear you talk like that, actually, as someone who's involved with a vendor, because as Mike said, we're always talking about the need to focus more on people. Some of the research that we've seen on transformation programs, the effort should be almost 50-50, right? In terms of, that upfront change management versus the actual implementation and the transformation. You mentioned the sort of the role of the customer success manager, I think you mentioned. Is that almost like the 50%, the new 50% that you're bringing in? It's like that role is really there to make you benefit from the product you're buying.
No, exactly. And I think customer success transforming into customer support transforming into a customer success department is a great example of transformation, because typically the people can still have part of the same responsibilities, but instead of being the person that just answers angry customers, you can actually work with the customer and try to what is the reason they're angry, right? Like typically it can also mean that they just didn't understand it properly. Like I can get nuts over an IKEA cabinet, but it's usually because the first thing I throw away is the setup manual, right? Like, screw this, it's too many pages, I can fix this myself. And then you end up with a bag of like 10 things you should have probably plugged in somewhere, it doesn't work, and it falls apart. And you can be that actual guide, like, okay, let's set this up together. Like, how is your process? How should we best incorporate that for you into our platform? And then you also give the customer success people much more meaning and much more happiness and joy in their work, I think, in their daily life. So it's transforming both in a good way.
I sense that there's something there that drives you. What is your sort of motivation to be in this space?
I mean, I've been on the other end. So I've been on the negative end, where transformation wasn't really a thing, and where there's lots of hierarchies and new people just saying, now we need to do this. And then that person was great in the first few weeks and very inspirational, and then left. And then 6 months later, the same thing happened. And I feel so blessed that I'm now at a company and in a kind of an industry as well, where that is not so much a thing, where it's really about growing. And that's why the communities, again, to go back to the communities, are so important. That's really about helping each other. And I think you will still have in your own company, it's still sometimes a part where you don't want to share your negatives, right? Because you feel like internally you might still feel like you're competing with the other guy that has the same role as you do, and you don't want to share the things that go wrong. And the communities, again, are a good outlet for that. And I just get passionate about people improving and taking steps, and people that enter a sales role as like a junior salesperson, just only doing prospecting, and now a VP of sales. It's just fantastic. I came from that, right? I started in the warehouse as picking orders, and I had to work my way up because I wasn't smart in school. And it motivates me that others go through that, and I want to facilitate a place where all can make that journey. If you have less of a good attention span in school, but you can still become some sort of C-level one day. It's fantastic.
That's brilliant, because you actually preempted a question that I had, because I wanted to know what it was in your past that motivated you to do it. The guy I mentioned earlier, that I was at a pub with a guy last night when the guy came over the road and gave me a hug. He used to be a chef, the guy I was originally chatting to. He used to be a chef, but he's now a service manager for a software developer. And I said to him, so what did you learn as a chef that you now apply as a service manager in technology? And he goes, well, nothing. And I said, I don't believe that. Tell me. And in the end, it was like, well, actually, you have to have a functioning team. Everybody needs to be clear on their roles. If you get really clear on your roles, then you have a successful kitchen. Ta-da. I wonder, in what you've just described there about starting in the warehouse, what is it from starting in the warehouse that you bring to what you're doing now, do you think?
Yeah, I think a few things. Warehouse and logistics work is, for most of it, it's logistics. I think logical is kind of hidden in the word there. So it's just a lot of logical reasoning, humble, humility. What do you call it? Humility? Is that English? I think so. Yeah, exactly. It's bad that I want to brag about it and I don't know the word for it, but but I think it's that as well. That it's important to remember where you come from and the steps you took, and it's important to remind others that there's steps you can still take. And I think with the new generations coming in, it's the mindset can be different a bit. Like, a lot of the new generations think that change will happen instead of change is triggered. I think that's where I can really help and where I get a lot of drive, because I not so much happened to me, right? I need to really fight and work my way up. And I think that kind of things helps a lot of people getting some inspiration and getting good tips to make things happen instead of wait for things to happen. I think that I take with me, just making things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. I think it's so important.
Yeah,
exactly.
Just get it done.
Yeah,
we've got 1,000 boxes to get out by 6 o'clock.
Yeah, and it's not about the strategy every morning. Like, let's see how we make these. Just do it. Just move the boxes.
Sounds fantastic, and congratulations on a successful career. It sounds really interesting. I always find the meandering careers more interesting to hear about. Normally at this point in the podcast, we have a question, and just a reminder, if you do want to ask us or the co-host a question, and it's podcast@generationcfo.com, or just send a message to Mike and myself on LinkedIn. And this is a bit of a techie question, so I don't want to go too much into it, but it is, again, a genuine question that's come from our community around data ethics. So we might lean on Mike a little bit here, but the question is, how do you see the role of data ethics evolving in the business landscape?
I suppose my first answer is, so you mentioned the IP, so intellectual property, which is a law thing. So as somebody with a bit of a law background, I'm always intrigued by definitions of stuff and making sure that we've got a definition. And I think one of the issues around data ethics at the moment and the way it's applied is there is no agreed definition of what it means. So I think so there's that. Firstly, we need as business to understand what we mean when we say the words. And for me to kind of simplify it, and I see this quite often, certainly working with data, is there's whether you can and whether you should. And I think it's as simple as that. Quite often you can do something. So I can take this data set, I can merge it with that data set, I can send all of these emails to all of those people, I can, whatever it may be. But the question, and you can probably do quite a lot of that legally, but then there's another question, which is whether you should do that and whether there's other implications of you actually doing that. And that's where it starts to fall into that data ethics trap. And I think going forward, businesses need to think much, much harder around all of the angles around whether they should do some of the things that they can do, if that makes sense. I realize that was kind of like a vague waffle.
No, answer, it was perfect setup, actually. I think, Walter, certainly from, I'm more in the business world, and, a lot of people talk about data being an asset, and certainly when people sell companies, the data that they have within their business is an asset. So it creates a bit of a problem for us, doesn't it, in business, where data is worth something and we might be able to profit from it. It's a bit like the community thing, right? We might be able to profit from data use, but should we?
No, 100%. I think there's many companies. I think with the GDPR things, it's become more tricky, and people become insecure about, like, well, can I store this? Can I log this? Can I actually, find Mike's email address here and his phone number? Is that okay if I just have that? And I think because people don't really know the answer to the question or don't care about the answer to the question because they are, somebody else will know this. Again, communities, you can ask around in your community, but also people buy tooling for it. I'm just going to buy this solution that contains data and will send me data to my CRM system where I can then prospect them. Because I trust that they have it in order. And, in your ISO and your, what do you have, SOC 2s, you can, of course, say, like, I apply to these and I do vendor assessments for these tooling that they are GDPR compliant, because there's also data suppliers that are not GDPR compliant, right? Any US born is not necessarily having to follow EU regulations.
Yeah.
So data is a tricky, so I get why this is a question in your community, because it's so tricky to play around with data. I always suggest, like, if you have a certain standard yourself and you do vendor assessments for data integrity, always ask them the same questions. Like, I live by these standards. Do you? And if the answer is yes, you should have some. And if that's also in terms and conditions, right? It's not only a salesperson telling you yes. It's written down somewhere in data processing agreements. Then you should feel secure that you do that. And I think data is becoming significantly more tricky to get. Your prospect data is becoming tricky to get, and your own IP also is important to log properly, because with the arrival of AI, many people can quickly, but can replicate parts of your code and try to take the shortcut to build a similar solution to yours and violate your IP rights. So it's also good to have IP lawyers. Really, that's something. If you're not a lawyer on IP yourself, intellectual property, don't do it. Don't do it yourself, because it's the smallest things in an agreement that can completely.
Have you given Wolter some money to be promoting your services or something?
Yeah,
To promote my IP. No, I haven't, but I will. I'll get you to
send you an
coffee
invoice, Mike. No problem.
Yeah. Okay. No,
you got it.
no. But so just in our answers there, just sort of reflecting on it, I think that what you see is that data is not just one field. So when people throw data as a word, it sounds, it's 4 letters. It's probably a 4-letter non-swear word that gets used most often.
Yeah.
But actually, as a field, there are many different facets to it. So ethics is one piece, so alongside privacy, alongside IP and permissions and stuff. So I think that we mentioned on a few podcasts ago when we were on with Andrew Newman, the piece of work I did with the Open Data Institute to try and define in plain English the elements that make up a data governance framework. And I think that's kind of where we're getting to in this answer is you've got a number of components that you need to put in place to be doing the right things around data, of which one of them is being ethical and considering the should question.
Yeah, 100%. And the integrity also, right? Integrity is or the quality or whatever, that's also one thing, because I can get you 1,000 emails from Mike Rose, but I don't know if I'm getting the right one to you, right? There might be more people that has your last name and first name.
He's very happy to give his email address. He's always looking for work.
I'm not sure that's true. I mean, interestingly, just interestingly on that, I was chatting to somebody a while back about Gmails, and apparently people can have the same Gmail address. So I keep getting Gmail messages from somebody in the Philippines that signed up to like different things, and obviously my account has ended up being the validation for it somehow. So there's definitely a data quality issue even in the biggest organizations.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
I did not know that. I did not know you get duplicate Gmail accounts. That's scary. Anyway, that's probably something
that's
for another
podcast
time. Yeah, that's definitely another podcast. So I'm conscious of time, and we're going to wrap things up now. So we're going to move on to our good data, bad data. And Wolter, this is just a chance for us to sort of hit some data headlines, really. And I found some good data this week, which is, again, it's always a bit of a surprise for me when I find good data. But there was a fantastic bit of open data project that was run in 2023. And Scope, that is a disability charity in the UK. I think they might be global, but they basically asked all of their volunteers or campaigners to visit the local playground near to them and to answer whether it was accessible and inclusive for disabled children. And what they've done now is that they've created a map of the UK so that you can now go onto their map and find, all of the accessible playgrounds in the UK, because unfortunately, most of them aren't actually accessible. So I thought that was a brilliant bit of, brilliant data project, and also brilliant use for people. And yes, you can download the results into Excel if you really want to.
Yeah, I love this as a kind of like crowdsourcing piece of data infrastructure that people can reuse. I think it's brilliant. I think, like any of these things, it needs to go through an iterative cycle. So I'm hoping now that this has been published, more people will input to it, because the playground over the road, which is definitely disabled access, isn't on there. So I'm going to have to do that myself later. So yeah, it's one of those where you can interact with it and add to it.
Yeah, and the one previous podcast, right? I think it was I can't remember who it was now. You have to remind me, Mike. But we were talking about open data projects are great, but it's the ongoing funding. So this is fantastic, but it's a snapshot in 2023. So who's paying for the 2024 version and the 2025 version? And if you really want to get this onto Google Maps, for everyone to use, which would be fantastic, you have to have that ongoing funding, right?
You're doing your best, aren't you, to turn this good data story into a bad data story? You're really you're really working at this.
No, I was trying to give you time to remind me who the speaker was. Who was
it was either Giuseppe or Andrew. It was one of.
It was Andrew. It was Andrew, I think.
Yeah.
It was Andrew. Yeah, lots of chat. Anyway, Wolter, what do you think of that as a bit of good data?
Yeah, I loved it. These kind of data, and you see that a lot. Like you say, to echo on your words, Chris. Unfortunately, a lot of the good data comes from people that do some sort of research for their studies, and then once studies completed, there's nobody actually carrying on to make that a recurring data thing. And the first thing when I opened the map with this data, and for those that are not looking at this map, it looks like a lot of markers. There's a whole bunch of these playgrounds, which in the first thing is fantastic, but I think data is always to be interpreted with other things surrounding data. And if I would find the same map of all the disabled people, then suddenly this data becomes very bad, because you could see it's like a fraction, because like the number of sheer buttons where there's playgrounds, I probably have them around my house. There's a whole bunch of playgrounds. So it's actually, if you compare it to the total available playgrounds that there are, and then benchmark that against like the total people that have a disability, it's probably not so much good data. It's good that people bring it up so we can act on the data, but it's probably bad.
You're doing the same thing.
I'm making it worse, Mike. I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm so sorry. It's the pessimistic podcast. I don't know.
It's the pessimistic podcast. I love that.
Yeah,
that'll be the strap line. Within a couple of months, it'll be the strap line. Just two grumpy data men.
Exactly. Yeah, we're trying to take a positive podcast and try to burn it down within 30 minutes.
I love it. I love the fact that you turned it into bad data, because that's actually very true, isn't it? That there aren't enough.
But it's good that people raise the problems, right? So it's good data in terms of let's make you aware that there's a problem. So it's good data, but it's a bad result in the data.
This is just an example of keeping the audience in mind, right? So to the government, they might go, "Oh, this is fantastic," but to individual disabled people and parents, they might go, "This is rubbish." So, keep the audience in mind. I think you've just stolen my bad data. I was going to talk about FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried, who's going to end up in prison for many, many decades because of his blockchain fraud, crypto fraud. But I think that was probably much more fun way to leave it, because I'm always bashing crypto, to be honest with you. I know that people are making a lot of money out of it, but I've always seen it as a bit of a digital liability rather than a digital asset. But hey,
and a shortcut to undeserved wealth.
Exactly. You took the words out of my mouth. Or
a shortcut to prison in the example.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, I think that's a great place to wrap this up. So thank you for that. Spoonful of pessimism to all my optimism. It's just great. So what I would say is join a community. And if you're in the SaaS world, then go check out Wolter's work. And obviously, if you're into RevOps and need solutions there, then also look at Wolter. Where can we find you, Wolter?
LinkedIn is the best.
LinkedIn's the best. Okay. As always. I should get this sponsored by LinkedIn. Everyone says it, but that's
you can also get Mike's Gmail address, and then he will forward to me. That's also fine.
I think you just need to Google Mike Rose and
Philippines.
So I think that's it from me. So thank you from me, and thank you, Mike.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Wolter. And remember, it's not all about the numbers.